pass to Leitner. Puts it up.
You're listening to the Culture State Podcast.
Get ready. Woo!
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Culture State Podcast. We have video this time, so if you're watching, thank you so much for watching the first video episode of the Culture State Podcast. My name is Chris Lee.
Faces.
That beautiful face right there.
That's right. I'm Dennis Cox.
And we're the host of the show for you today. Dennis, I got to ask you this question. This is a kind of a shout out to our guests for today. Have you ever been a part of something and you felt like after you were done being a part of it, even while you were a part of it, you never really got your just due for your for the things that you've done for that group of people or that group that you were a part of?
100%. Now, I'm not going to speak specifics on those situations, but I think it's something that we've all have done where we've gone the extra mile or have done a little bit extra, more than what we were asked for in a workplace, or just going above and beyond for people than what they expect. And then you kind of get left out or get nothing in return, or, you felt like you're not part of the team, even though you've given everything to the team. And that is something I think everyone in some way, shape, or form can say they felt in some point in their life.
Well, that's exactly how the guy that we're going to have on our show today, Matt Doherty, feels at North Carolina. And honestly, I'm not sure that I blame him. You know what I'm saying? Like, he helped win a national championship as a player in 1982. And then, he comes back as a coach for a program that, did pretty good under Bill Guthridge, but basically needed some new, young, fresh leadership. And you'll hear his explanations, on this show. He really went in depth on a lot of things. He was a lot more honest about that situation than what I anticipated.
Yeah, he was definitely open and did not hold anything back. But he also, and he'll talk about this, where he says that he lacked in some areas that he didn't realize that he needed to improve upon in his own personal self when it comes to coaching and leadership. So it was pretty, I thought it was pretty, I would say there's a little level of humility that comes with that, to admit, hey, I'm not perfect. And there are many things that caused me to be gone from Carolina.
Yeah. He talks about that in his new book. We'll talk about that with Matt Doherty. And, we'll also talk about the coaching change, what he thought about Hubert Davis coming in, Roy Williams coming in, or deciding to retire, I should say. He did mention his relationship with Roy Williams, and it seems like they have a good relationship, but it's very interesting for him to kind of go over his relationship with a few others. He didn't quite call out names, but you can kind of get a sense of who he was kind of talking about.
Oh yeah. He didn't name anyone specifically, but you definitely got a sense of, this person or that person for sure.
So I'm excited to give you guys this interview along with Dennis. This was one of our best interviews so far on Culture State. My gosh, it was probably one of it's probably the spiciest interview we've done. Wouldn't you say?
100% total spice. 100% spicy.
If you don't like spicy food, then get out the kitchen, because this joint is spicy. Matt Doherty coming up right here on the Culture State Podcast. I am Chris Lee.
I'm Dennis Cox. Matt Doherty after this.
All right, let's talk about this new book, Rebound from Pain to Passion, leadership lessons learned by Matt Doherty. Of course, former coach at UNC, of course, former player at UNC, won a national championship there. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Chris and Dennis. I appreciate it.
I wanted to ask you first, just starting off, as far as this book, we know your history with Carolina from player to coach, how that ended as you with the coach. And when I was reading on the book, it looked like, a lot of your motivation kind of came from, I guess, you being let go over at Carolina. Talk a little bit more about that and why this is the right time for you to write this book.
Yeah. I went on a leadership journey after I lost my job. I think that as a coach, as a player, we're wired to, you lose. The great thing about athletics, one of the biggest lessons you learn is failure. People don't think of that. They think, oh, the winning and the teamwork and the goal setting. I'm like, no, you also learn how to lose and how to get better from losses. And so we're wired as a coach, as a player, when you have a bad game, you watch the film and you try to improve the next day in practice. When you have a bad season, you reflect and study the films and meet as a staff and figure out what you need to change to improve for the next season. So when I lost my job, it would have been easy just to point fingers. And Roy Williams always says, if you're pointing one finger at somebody, 3 are pointing back at you. So I'm like, okay, what part? I believe North Carolina had something to do with this, but what part did I have? And I wanted to try to fix that. So I went on a leadership journey. And as I'm sitting in classrooms at the Darden School and at Wharton, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I would have taken some of these classes before as a head coach, maybe I'd still be the head coach. Classes like emotional intelligence, managing change. Those things aren't taught. Leadership's the most important topic probably in the world that's not formally taught. And even if it is taught, you could take a class, but you still need to experience it. You still need to practice it. So that's why I decided to write the book. I think the timing was, I've always, in the back of my mind, played with the idea of writing a book. Never really got to it. It's hard. It's a lot of work. But when I did corporate talks as an executive coach, people were asking for a book. And it's really something to have on your resume. It gives you credibility. And you just hope it's a good book. Anybody could write a book. You just hope it's a book people want to read.
I think it's interesting with the timing with the coaching change at North Carolina, and Hubert Davis steps in. But one of the things I thought was interesting, and I wanted to get your take on this, and maybe it didn't come across the same way to you, but when they talk about the Carolina coaching tree, I feel like they always talked about Coach Smith, then it was Coach Guthridge. Feel like they kind of skipped over you a little bit, then talked about Coach Williams when it talked about the coaching tree.
You think?
It wasn't. It was just one bad year, pretty much. For like, how do you feel about that?
That hurts. That hurts. I feel left out at times, and I'd be lying to you if I said, "Oh, it's no big deal." It's a big deal. It bothers me. It bothers my wife. It bothers my friends. We get text messages when someone says something and I'm not included. It was nice, very nice, and I reached out to Hubert and to Jackie Manuel in their last press release where I was mentioned. And you might think, oh, that's just petty, that's little deal, but when you put your heart and soul into something and it gets taken away from you, you just want some recognition. I talk about core values, and my 4 core values are respect, trust, commitment, and positivity. We all want just a little respect. That's all I want. Just a little respect. Just my name in a press release. Thank you for your contributions. Yeah, I did have a tough season, an 8-20 season, but I knew we were going to have a bad season. I predicted that because I knew it was in the pipeline. I took the job at a tough time. Roy Williams turned it down, and I took it, and I wanted to keep it in the family. And I knew that second year was going to be tough because of the talent that was leaving. And we needed to do a good job recruiting, and we did. We recovered. We had an injury. We didn't make the NCAA tournament my last year. But we were on track to do that, and because Sean May gets hurt, and then 2 years later, that team wins a championship. And I never got recognition for that, from anybody, and outside, inside the family, which, that hurt too, right? I mean, so those are the scar. Those are the I talk about driving over the bitter bridge, trying to stay on the bridge, driving over the Bitter River, when those thoughts come up, you get angry and you drive into the river, right? So you got to try to stay focused and stay calm and be right with the Lord and, take the high road. But sometimes that's hard. So here you guys are bringing it up. You recognize it. And so it doesn't take much, just some kind of appreciation that, hey, you took the job at a tough time and you brought in a team that won a national championship 2 years later. We appreciate your efforts.
Do you still stay in communication with any former players that you had while you were the coach there?
Oh, yeah, sure. I just talked to Jackie Manuel the other day. I talked to Raymond Felton, Sean May, Melvin Scott, David Noel from time to time. So, yeah, I stay in touch with some of those guys.
Also wanted to know, has Roy Williams ever reached out to you? Because, like you said, a lot of the guys that he won a championship with, that first one, were the guys that you recruited. Did he ever reach out to you afterwards? Or is there, I know you said there's not a lot of recognition internally, but has there been one or two people that have reached out every once in a while to say, hey, thank you. Hey, Matt, how are you doing? Come back into the fold. Are you okay? Has that happened?
Coach Williams has been good at welcoming me back to reunions, to practices, to games. He's always given me good seats, good parking passes. And, one thing he did that I really appreciated was in the coach's locker room. He had a picture of all the former coaches up to Frank McGuire, and I was included in that in the locker room, which meant a lot to me. There was a time where I felt like I was expunged from the program, like I was a black sheep, like I didn't even exist, and that was hurtful. I'm being honest. You try to be a tough guy and be macho, but deep down that hurt. And if we talk about a family, everyone should be included, even the ones you may not like a lot, right? When we have a family reunion, you can talk about me, but just invite me. I'll bring the biscuits.
That's funny. I wanted to ask, as far as like the lessons learned, we talked a little bit on the Carolina side, but what are some things that you would have done a little bit differently to still have the job? So maybe you could have been.
I would have stayed at Notre Dame.
2005.
I would have stayed at Notre Dame. You think about it. I took the job July 11th. Hubert got the job early April. I had no time to acclimate and get adjusted, and I was coming from the outside. And, the more I think about it, the more I would say, what, just stay at Notre Dame. I got a good job. I could have been there forever. I mean, Mike Bray's still there, and he's the one who followed me. And, I wouldn't have put my staff in harm's way. All the talk about Hubert hiring a staff that all played at North Carolina. Well, my staff did not. And, yet I asked the AD, I said, can I bring my staff? If I can't bring them, I'll stay at Notre Dame. And he said, you can bring them. Well, Coach Smith wasn't very happy with that deep down, and that permeated through the program. The former players weren't happy. And now witnessing what Hubert's gone through, you realize, the voices are pretty loud. So if I had to do it over again, I would have stayed at Notre Dame. If I decided to take the job, the question should be asked, why did the job open up in June? Like it doesn't just, right. that was put everybody in a bad spot. Most coaches retire like Coach Williams did in April, in March or April. And, but this was dragged out to June. And you say, well, why? Well, there's a lot of reasons why that I won't get into, but that put me in a bad spot. The assumption was Coach Williams was going to take the job, and he turned it down and put a fly in the ointment. And that whole thing of taking the job in June was awful. I mean, taking the job in July was awful. Middle of a recruiting period, trying to move families, trying to bring my staff. having, to announce that I'm not retaining the previous staff, trying to get to know 4 secretaries who've been there an average of 20 years each. That was hard. So managing change is the thing that I did not do well. I was put in a bad spot because of timing, but managing change is an art form. And that's where you've got to know your environment. And I should have gone slower with change. I should have spent more time with the secretaries. I should have figured out a way maybe to keep the previous staff and bring my staff with me, maybe in a reduced role, but at the same pay. So they're not out of a job, but yet I'd keep the old school happy with keeping those staff members there. But that's also the responsibility of Dick Bedore and Dean Smith. They're creating this change in July. They're the leaders. They know the environment better than I do. And I didn't get a lot of guidance there.
So was it Dick Bedore who said, hey, bring in your own staff, you have full 100% reign on what you could do? Was that his call?
Yeah, well, he did. I asked him, I said, if I can't bring my staff, I'll stay at Notre Dame. No, he said, you could bring your staff. And then Coach Smith said to me, it's your program, run it how you see fit. I'm one to take things for face value. And that's something I say in the book. Yeah. You have to listen to what's not being said. And how things are being said. Because 50% of communication is body language. So how are they saying it? Are they comfortable saying that to you? But I was in such a rush and I was an experienced leader. They told me, it's your program, run it how you see fit. They told me you can bring your staff with you. So I did. And what's the number one priority of every coach that takes a new job?
I would say try to get some recruiting in.
Yeah, recruiting.
So the first day I'm on the job, first full day, press conference. The next day I'm on a private plane to go see Carmelo Anthony play.
Wow.
Where if, I'm Hubert or I'd get the job in April, my first day in the job would be to go around the office and talk to the secretaries, talk to the people in the building, talk to the players. The players would be on campus. My players weren't all on campus because it was July. So to get to know everybody, it was just forced and compressed and could not be as effective with the managing of the change.
Do you think also, I guess, when you're mentioning that, the not only did it put you in a bad spot, but when you talk about the secretaries or anybody else in the building, maybe even the players to an extent, other people at the athletics department, because you had to be on the road, you had to go recruit. Do you think that maybe that absence right after, because you're going back and forth, maybe had people think that you were probably not touchable, not accessible, not somebody they can come up and talk to, which maybe kind of led to like, okay, 8-20, we got to get this guy out?
Right. No, I think so. I think that no question. Looking back, I probably should have sent my assistants out recruiting and I stayed around and make sure that I got to know the people, even though I knew them. I knew the secretaries because I was a former player, but really get to know them on a working level and sit down and take time and understand that, hey, this change is hard. It's going to be hard on everybody emotionally. And that's the emotional intelligence part that I didn't get. I was committed to the task of recruiting talent because I knew what was in the pipeline. We needed to really recover with a good class. And we did. We got Jackie, Jawad, and Melvin. And, those guys were, keys to a big part of the 05 championship team. But yeah, I should have taken my time and spent time with the secretaries and the players. And ideally, the change wouldn't have occurred in July.
I want to ask you this, we're kind of switching gears, but it goes along with the idea of adapting to change. And, you aren't a head coach right now, But with the whole name, image, and likeness thing happening right now, also the transfer portal going crazy, so many more players. I want to say double the amount of players that were in the portal last year at the summer and right now, or at least we're in. How do you as a coach, or how do coaches have to adapt to that new change in college basketball, knowing that basically you're going to be dealing with free agency every year from April to June for the most part?
Yeah, I think a couple things. The kids you're coaching, you can't coach the same way you used to. You have to be very delicate. Will you please screen on the baseline? Will you please cut hard to the wing? Please look at the open man if you'd so desire.
As someone who coaches right now, I coach lacrosse. I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And it's really doing a disservice to the kids, because then when the kids get to the real world, then they either don't get the job or get fired, or productivity for that company is not going to reach maximum capacity because kids are soft. I don't know how else to say it. And so then the other way I'd probably I'd have at least one guy on my staff as a transfer portal guy, like that's his job. We got to live in the portal, because now you can get a kid who transfers in and has to, if he wants to transfer again, has to sit a year. So now he's more mature. He's been through it. And if he wants to leave, now there is a little bit of a hook that he has to sit a year. So I'd really dive into the transfer portal and live in the transfer portal.
Speaking of players that you had when you took over at North Carolina, because you're talking about players different now than they were back then, how did the players on the court react and adapt to you being their head coach when you first
I think what I wanted to bring to the program was the same thing I needed to bring at Notre Dame. We just had technically better talent. It was a soft program. At the time, it was a soft program. It was a pretty program. I mean, we were pretty. We were all Americans. We had Carolina blue, but we were soft. We were lucky to have gone to the Final Four the year before, and the main reason we did was Julius Peppers joined the team after Christmas and helped them go on a run and added the toughness. But we didn't lift weights on a consistent basis. Guys could get out of sprints, and I didn't think there was an accountability to toughness. So I wanted to bring that in and make us the best conditioned and most mentally tough team we could be. And some people didn't like that, but at that point they didn't have a choice, but it was reflected in our run. We won 18 games in a row, and we ranked number one in the country. We beat Duke at Duke for the first time in 5 years. Players don't like change. Players don't like to be pushed. The good ones do. The great ones do. The great ones push themselves. But the coaches, the name coach came from a coach, a horse-drawn coach that moves people from point A to point B. And that's my job as a coach, to move team and players from point A to point B and get them out of their comfort zone. So that was a shock to their system. I was more demonstrative than Coach Guthridge. I was younger. I was more aggressive. I pushed them. And, they didn't like it at first, but we won, and they may not have still liked it. And then at the end, we didn't get better. That's the thing that was hard. You could win games, but you could see as a coach that your performance is dropping, but you could still be winning games. So to try to tell the players, hey, we're winning, but we're not getting better. And that's going to catch up to us unless we start getting better. And, I remember a game in particular at Wake Forest. We won on a last second shot, and everyone was kind of happy in the locker room. And I'm like, guys, we won because we're more talented. We didn't win because we played better. And, I don't think they like that. People need to embrace the truth. I talk about that in the book. You've got to have a truth teller in your life, people that keep it straight with you. And a lot of people don't like the truth, especially young players, because they've had their butts kissed for so long by AAU coaches and the like, telling them how great they are. And then a college coach is often the first person to tell them, hey, you're not that good in that area of the game. You're not a great shooter. That's a bad shot. Like Caleb Love this year. I would ask him, are you a good shooter taking bad shots, or are you a bad shooter?
Wow.
Wow. I want to hear his answer. Well, he's not going to say I'm a bad shooter, right? He's going to say, well, I must be taking bad shots. Okay, then take better shots.
Yeah.
Because you're taking the most shots on the team and your shooting percentage stinks. Now, if you tell a kid that in that manner, you're going to hurt his feelings, and he's going to call dad and his AAU coach, and he's going to enter the transfer portal. So is the kid better off hearing the truth or running for cover?
I think I hear a show starting here. The Truth with Matt Doherty. I think I would listen to that show all the time.
Yes, I'm in.
We need to get you on the radio as soon as possible.
I like it. Let's do it.
100%.
Hopefully, if me and Dennis could get a chance to return to the radio, we had a little stint in March, so hopefully we get a chance to come back. You'll be a regular guest. We're gonna have the Truth segment with Matt Doherty for sure.
That might be a new podcast. Got the Rebound podcast getting ready to launch. The Truth podcast. I like it. You guys, I'll throw you guys some t-shirts.
For sure. I see you writing it down right now. First off, thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead and let people know how they can get the book and, and everything like that. And also whatever else you want to plug with whatever you're doing right now.
Yeah. Thank you very much. You can find the book on Amazon, Rebound From Pain to Passion. You go to my website, rebound-book.com. I'm in a second print. Book's gone very well received. A lot of companies are buying it for their employees. It's been better received than I had imagined. I am on the business front. I'm an executive coach. I do corporate talks. I also work for Vistage. Vistage is the leading executive coaching organization in the country. So I work with business owners and CEOs of small to mid-sized companies, and I also do corporate talks. So yeah, it's fun work. I am coaching. That's the fulfilling part.
That's awesome. This is definitely one of those situations where we're going to have a part 2 at some point. So you'll definitely be hearing from us once again at some point later on in the future.
All right. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to Matt Doherty for joining us on the show. I definitely didn't know what to expect interviewing Matt Doherty. That was my first time. A few people did tell me that he's very honest, and I guess we got a chance to see that with this interview.
And that's something I appreciated from him, is that, like you said, he was open, he was honest. Now, a lot of people out there may not agree with how he feels, but that's his truth. That's how he feels, and people have to understand that. He was, again, admitted to and open to what his faults were at the time and why things didn't go well at Carolina for him.
Yeah. I think the part that was the most shocking to me is when he said, I should have just stayed at Notre Dame. And to think about the ripple effect that would have caused, because then you would have had no Mike Bray as head coach of Notre Dame, at least at that
still
time.
there.
Who knows what would have happened in the future. But maybe we're still talking about Matt Doherty as one of the top coaches in the ACC right now.
I didn't even think about that, because remember, Roy Williams had turned down the job initially, and I think that's one of the reasons why Doherty got there. If Doherty stayed at Notre Dame, who knows who would have been the head coach of Carolina? Who knows if that person was successful, if Roy Williams even would have came back to Carolina?
Yeah.
the ripple effect. That's just, it's not only just a ripple effect, it's the butterfly effect in that sense, because that one decision by him to leave Notre Dame and come back home to Carolina had this long lasting impact on college basketball as we know it today. Honestly, Chris, until you mentioned it, I didn't even think about that.
I think, there could be an argument made that at the time, maybe Carolina would have gone the Hubert Davis route for that year, and that probably would have been Phil Ford. So how would Phil Ford have done as the head coach? Would he have been so good that there is no Roy Williams at North Carolina? Would that have worked out? Would Phil Ford be the one that's kind of excommunicated from the program instead of Matt Doherty? There's so many different things to kind of think about and consider if he would have stayed at Notre Dame, like he just said he should have done.
Yeah, it's a lot of layers of what if, but for him to come on and say something like that that was jaw dropping to say the least to you and I.
For sure. We guys hope that you like the video format as well. If you're watching, but if you're listening, okay, we still coming through your ears on every podcast platform that's out there. If your platform has 5 stars, please give us 5 stars.
However, 5
they
stars.
Ask you to rate us the highest. Pretty please, we love you so much for it.
A thick 5 stars only, though.
Yes,
thickest of 5 stars
with 2 C's. And also make sure you follow us. I am at Chris Lee TV.
I'm at the Fan Rookie. You can follow our show at Culture State Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Get all the good stuff from there.
Yes, sir. You're listening to the Culture State Podcast. We're back next week with another great show.
The Culture State Podcast, part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network, with new shows coming out every Wednesday. Download and subscribe from wherever you get your podcasts, including the WRAL Sports Fan app.